Thank you all for attending this morning. We have Fran Stephens, the Director of Pre-Award Services from the Office of Research Services, who is going to talk about how to submit and when to submit and why to submit the OU information sheet. She'll also do a walkthrough of how to actually complete the form. So Fran, if you want to go ahead and get started.
Okay, welcome. The first things we're going to do is a few slides that talk about why you need to do an information sheet and when to do one. So what kinds of projects require an information sheet? Anytime you're doing external funds for any type of work that has deliverables, then you need to do an information sheet because it should be going through the Office of Research Services. This can involve anything like research, service items, instruction, training. There isn't any criteria related to whether it's some type of an agreement or a contract or a threshold on funds, like if it has to be over $5,000 or anything. There is no threshold. The only exception to this is if it is a gift, so there's nothing coming in on it as a deliverable, and those go through the OU Foundation. If you ever have any questions about whether you should be going through ORS or the OU Foundation, please just contact our office and we'll let you know. We work very closely with them and we have a good relationship. Things that don't need to go through us, we will let you know that you need to contact the foundation. So why do you have to do an information sheet and route? Well, to begin with, it's a requirement that all the faculty and staff route their externally funded projects. This is on the BPRP website. The information sheet is what puts the proposal on the ORS calendar so that we know that it needs to be worked and we can pull the guidelines and start helping you. It also sends notices of what's being done to the Office of Technology and Commercialization, Export Control, IT, and sometimes other offices within the BPRP. Note that there aren't any documents needed to complete the information sheet. So you don't have to have the budget, you don't have to have a statement of work, you definitely don't have to have the full proposal. You don't need anything but the ideal that you're going to be submitting a proposal, who it's going to go to. The information sheet and the routing is what helps make sure that certain compliance items are taken care of or that they're flagged for monitoring later. So for example, if you indicated human subjects were involved, but you hadn't requested your IRB clearance yet, we would mark that as pending and we would flag it so that when an award notice comes in, we know to get with you to start the process for getting your approvals done so that you can have access to the funds to spend. The information sheet is what gives ORS the information that's loaded into Cayuse, which is our internal software for managing proposals. These entries with any changes that you make prior to routing are what helps determine like who's listed as your co-PI, how much credit people have, and things like that. The routing is what makes sure that all of the appropriate people involved in your proposal, your co-PIs, your chair and your dean, are aware of what's going on because they have to certify the proposal. We believe that if there are questions, then the chairs and the deans know to contact you with those questions. That's how come we don't require a final proposal document to be available when the routing is done. When the routing is finished, that is what gives ORS or the PI the actual authority to legally submit an official submission on behalf of the university. So I wanted to make it clear that the proposal and award process at OU is actually a two-step process. The first step is the proposal submission, which includes the routing. The second step is the award negotiations, any revisions that are done, and the award account setup. An award account can't be set up if the first step isn't done. And it's usually a lot less trouble if we do the steps in order than if we're trying to catch up on something that's already been submitted at the actual award stage. When do you have to fill out an info sheet? So from a requirement perspective, anytime external funds are going to be requested for sponsored work, and this includes submissions of any types of preliminary proposals, however it's defined, white papers, notice of intents, letters of intents, fellowships, anything that's going to be running through the University of Oklahoma. The only exceptions to this are as if you are going to be accepting the funds personally, then you don't have to go through ORS. We do tell you, though, that if you have an option of either accepting the funds personally or running them through the university, our recommendation is to run them through the university, because when you utilize the university, that also gives you access if there's any problems to legal, or HR helps make sure that your tax commitments are taken care of and you don't have to worry about filing special tax paperwork for the funds that you're receiving. From a timing perspective, as soon as you know that you're going to submit a proposal, that's when we'd like you to do the info sheet. We like to get them at least 2 weeks prior to the deadline for an uncomplicated proposal. An uncomplicated proposal is one that doesn't have subcontracts and doesn't have unusual or very involved guidelines on what has to be done in the submission. If you've got subcontracts or cost share or special forms and things like that, then it's usually wise to allow more than 2 weeks. One of the reasons for that is on a subcontract, whoever is involved with us on a subcontract is going to want time internally to do their routing, to get their permission to be involved in the subcontract, and to provide us their papers. If we are the subcontract, then whoever we're going to be submitting our subcontract paperwork to is going to want to receive that paperwork in time to meet their internal routing commitments. We also want to make you aware of the fact that the date that you submit your information sheet is the consideration on how your proposal will be handled if an issue comes up on the submission date where we have a lot of proposals going in at the same time. So for example, we've got 10 proposals going in at 5 o'clock, and you and another PI submit your information for submission at exactly the same time to us. We would go back and look at who filed their information sheet first to determine which one was going to be worked first in the queue. So that is something that you also might want to keep in mind, especially when you start seeing notices come out from ORS that a heavy deadline is approaching. How do you find the link for the information sheet? Well, it's in a lot of different places. You can go to the VPRP website. There's a quick link on the bottom of it, and it's also scattered in various places, such as proposal development, proposal submission, and also under FAQs. And when I go through the demonstration on how to actually fill one out, I'm going to take you through the quick link that's on the VPRP's website. You can email ris@ou.edu. That's for Research Information Services. Anytime you have a question and you're not sure who to contact, this is the email that you can go to, and they'll be happy to send you the link to the info sheet. You can email your proposal development specialist if you know who that is or if you've worked with one in the past. You can also do a search on OU's homepage for either info sheet or information sheet, and either one will take you to links where you can access the form. So this is the page that I'm going to be taking you to, where the link is on the bottom left, and I'm not going to go into this anymore because I'm actually going to show you when we do the demonstration. So let me switch over to that. So Cindy, you'll have to let me know if we lose the screen at any time. So this is the home page for the VPRP. We're going to go in under Norman Campus. And when we go all the way down here to the bottom, you'll see quick links. And right now we have a tab here called Grants. That's where all of the ORS information is loaded. In the near future, they're going to be launching a new website that'll have a tab along the top that says Office of Research Services. But it'll still have the quick links, and there'll still be links scattered throughout. So you click on this and it opens the page for the form. Now this form doesn't save while you're in the process of completing it. So once you start it, you've got to finish it, or you have to go in and restart it from scratch. Anything that's required has an asterisk after the end of it. So you see after proposal title, you have to enter something, even if it's to be determined, or if you are going to enter what you think might be the title, but you're not sure. Anything that you enter on this info sheet, our office can change later. So don't be afraid that you're going to enter something wrong or that you're going to cause some major catastrophe if you answer something the wrong way. This is just a heads up for our office and some other offices of what you're thinking about doing. So I'm going to go in here and I'm going to put something for the title. So I have to say who the sponsor is. So the sponsor is who is the funding agency as far as OU is concerned. So who is going to be sending OU the money? So I'm going to say the money is going to come from OSU. Oh, let me get down to that tab. Is OU a subcontract? So if we're not submitting directly to the sponsor, who's the final source of the funds, then we're a subcontract. So in this scenario that I'm loading right now, we're going to get our funds from Oklahoma State University. So they're our sponsor, but Oklahoma State University is going to get their money from the National Science Foundation. And so in this case, OU will be a subcontract. So I'm going to mark that yes. And our project is going to be funded with flow-through money. So I'm going to say yes here, because flow-through means it's flowing from somebody else. And you'll notice that this word right here, these words are all in blue. That means there's a link there and you can go and it'll tell you a definition of what that word means. Now you'll start noticing we don't have asterisks on these. So this is fill it out if you know the information. It helps us save time in finding stuff later. If you don't tell us the program you're submitting to, one of the first questions we're going to come back to you is what program or what's your solicitation number that you're submitting to. So I'm just going to put NSF 20-1, which is the general guidelines. If you have an address for the guidelines, go ahead and give those. I will note, however, if the link that you give us only takes us to a general landing page, it doesn't do us any good because we have to have the specific solicitation that you're wanting to apply to. If you have sponsor contact information that's not listed in guidelines, or for example, if you were doing a project with a company, then you can put that contact information here. What day is this required or anticipated to be due for submission? So I'm going to say that this is needed on March the 31st of this year. And that's the deadline that's required by the guidelines. So see this note, it talks about if we're a subcontract, they might have a deadline that's different than the sponsor's deadline. So OSU is probably going to want this from us about 2 weeks from the deadline because they have an internal policy of I think it's 5 days that they have to have their stuff in for routing. So they're probably going to want it from us around March the 15th. So that's what we would put when we think that it's going to actually really need to be done. And you might confirm this with your contact at OSU, or you can explain it to us in the comments in the block right below here, why you're saying the date is different. So another thing that you might do this is, for example, maybe the submission date's at the end of the month, but you're fixing to go on sabbatical, or you're fixing to travel out of country, or to go someplace where you're not going to have internet access. So you want to try and submit on March the 20th or something before you're going to depart. So that's all you would do, is go in here and put what day you actually really want it to be done, and then say why. The urgency is also a required entry. This tells us what is setting it. Is it a hard deadline or not? So I'm going to say that this is a hard deadline, but let me explain some of the others. So an if possible deadline is when you would like it to be done by, but the sponsor's not really giving you a firm, hard deadline. So maybe you're doing a proposal with a company, and they would just like to have it done sometime in the next couple of months, but they really haven't given you a, we have to have it by this date or we're not going to do it date. Another possibility is you're doing a submission to something that either is not being requested by the sponsor, so it's an unsolicited proposal, or you're doing a submission to something that has an open window. Like NSF has a lot of things now that are open windows. And so you may be trying to get in by a certain date to meet when your hearing evaluation panels are going to go out. But if that date isn't met, it's not a biggie. You can still submit because the window is still open. What are your anticipated dates that you think the work is going to be done? So I'm going to say this is going to be February the 1st, 2022, and my end date is going to be January 31st, 2024. So the reason why this is important is not only because hopefully you've looked at the guidelines and you know if the guidelines have established a specific date or the length of duration you can have, your proposal development specialist will use these dates to set up the spreadsheet that they send you. So for example, if you indicated only 1 year was involved, they would only send you a template that was active for 1 year. Your project type, you're pretty much always going to select that it's a new proposal or a preliminary proposal. A revised proposal is where a sponsor has come to you and asked to have something change on a recent submission or in anticipation that you might be funded. An award supplement or an award renewal would be if you already have an award and the sponsor is going to give you extra funds. That would be a supplement. Or if the sponsor is going to allow you to renew for another time frame related to this initial award. So I'm going to select new proposal. Let me go down a little bit more. My method of delivery most of the time is going to be grants.gov or other. And anytime your guidelines say grants.gov, 99% of the time we're actually going to do that using our Caillou software, because we have a module that allows us to do what's called system to system, where we load everything in Caillou and it does a level of error checking, and then it pushes it into grants.gov. So anytime your proposal says grants.gov, you can select grants.gov here, but 9 times out of 10, we're going to go in grants.gov. Since I've indicated that this is a subcontract, most subcontracts are going to go in electronic mail. So that's what I'm going to pick here. So that's all of our general information section. So now we're going to go into the personnel information. Personnel information is only based on people that are at OU Norman that are involved in the proposal. So they're part of your proposal team. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put my name. And my department. Now it asks me for how much credit. This is research credit on who is doing the work of the research as far as the team at OU Norman is concerned. It is used for SRI/FAR considerations, and there is a lot of discussions going on now about how sponsored research incentive credits are being applied, and that may change in the future. So for now, just concentrate on just using this to fill out based on who is doing what amount of research related to the OU team only. I will say that there are times that if we have a combination of team members that are tenured and untenured, that sometimes the PI will allow more research credit for the untenured people, because some departments use research credit on proposals as a consideration for tenure considerations. This credit amount has to come to 100%. So if I'm the only person on here, I'll put 100%. If I have a split appointment based on PeopleSoft, then I would put the credit in here based on my PeopleSoft split. So if I'm 50% ORS and 50% Provost, that's what I'd put, 50% for ORS and 50% for Provost. If I don't have an official appointment in PeopleSoft, then put it at 100% of whatever your appointment is. If you think it should be something different, put a remark down at the end of the info sheet, or contact your PDS and discuss it after you submit the info sheet. So I'm going to put 50% here because I'm going to add another person. So to add more people, you just do add investigator. So I'm going to put Cindy on here as my next person. And it says you can pick status. While you can pick any of these, we will normally only load CoPI because the system doesn't really recognize for routing all of the other positions, and we want whoever is on your team that you have loaded as personnel to also be someone who sees the routing, but you can pick any of those you want. Now, if I had more people I was going to add, I would have to break my credit down more so that it would still meet the 100%. And if you get confused on this and you mess up, don't worry about it, because your proposal development specialist will come back to you and ask. And you can add people after you submit the information sheet too. We'll go back over with you how you want the credit to show. I believe that this will let you add up to 15 or 20 people. If you run out of where it won't let you add anymore, then you can go down to remarks and you can put notes on other people that you want to add in remarks. So then we go to the PI contact area. So this is just how you want us to get a hold of you. So I'm going to put, actually I should probably put 405 in front of it, and what email address. If you had an additional person that you wanted listed here to also get any emails that you're going to be receiving related to your information sheet or your proposal, then you would list them here. So maybe you want your co-PI to be on here. Maybe you have an assistant or a postdoc who's going to be helping you with compiling some of the proposal submission stuff. So this is the name that you put here. I would also mention that if you receive email from your PDS and they don't copy the person that you put in here, then just let them know, because it's easy to miss that there's an additional name typed in here because of how the information sheet looks when we receive it in our email box. So now we start getting into some of the questions that are associated with your project, and that's in the project information tab. So all of these, for the most part, have to have an answer. If you're not sure about how to answer something, just answer it no. So is the proposal OU Tulsa related? If you are appointed at OU Tulsa, then you would say yes. I'm not appointed at OU Tulsa, so I'm going to say no. Are you a member of the OU Stevenson Cancer Center? So are you affiliated with them? Which we do have some OU Norman people that are. If you are, you mark yes, because there are sometimes they ask for information from us on proposals that Stephen Cancer Center members have submitted. I'm not one, so I'm going to say no. Is this proposal going to go through or be managed by another institution or center at OU? So say who it is. An example of an entry that we might see here would be ARC, the radar lab. Another example might be K20. So if someone else is going to be involved like that, then you just indicate them by typing them in here. Is additional research space required for this work? So you're going to need more space in a lab, a new lab. What do you need to do this work that you don't have? So if additional space is needed, you say yes. If you say yes to this question or to space renovations needed, like maybe you need an exhaust hood added or a higher volume fan, you say yes. This alerts someone within the BPRP staff that you've indicated that you may have a space need for the research that you want to do, and they'll reach out and contact you and see if you have let them know that you need space, what you need, what they might be able to do to help. If you've been in conversation with your chair or dean, if not, they'll help you with those conversations. So that's what happens when you check yes here. Neither of those apply for what I'm doing. Is required equipment being requested? You just say yes or no. I'm not needing any equipment, so I'm going to say no. Are specialized university facilities needed? This would be things like the microscopy lab, genetic testing stuff, things like that. And if you want to see a list of what's involved, you just click on that blue link and it'll take you. The only reason I'm not going there is because I don't want to get to a site and then have trouble getting back during this demonstration. If you have included those, did you also include those costs in your budget? Maybe you didn't have to because of the type of work that you're going to be doing there. Maybe it's something that you're planning on paying out of startup funds or something from the department. So you might not have indicated that it's in the budget, but that highlights it to the PDS to maybe ask if you should have or not. The next questions are asking about specific assets or places that you might be using as part of this proposal. And what happens with that is usually an email is sent to someone at these facilities to let them know that you're anticipating using their facilities either as part of the info sheet or as part of the routing so that they have a heads up that work is being expected. So I'm going to say no to these. I'll also mention that on the ARC facilities, it's very important if ARC facilities are going to be involved that you check yes on that, because the ARC charges a 3% fee on direct cost in the budget. And so your PDS will set your budget up to show that extra fee should be counted. So that's it for that section. So then we go into intellectual property. So these are questions related to protecting intellectual property and patents and copyright. And if you have any questions, you can go to their office and talk with them. Take your best guess when you're filling this out. Most of the time, you're going to know if you've got software you're developing or IP that you're going to be working with from a company that might need to be protected. This last box down here says that you acknowledge that you need to comply with OU's intellectual property policies and that you're going to work with us and whatever offices in the university you need to make sure that you protect any inventions or intellectual property that are created as part of your research. Conflict of interest is next. So conflict of interest is related to this particular proposal. You may have filed paperwork at the provost about relationships that you have, either nepotism, like with brothers and sisters or children or husbands or spouses, whatever. And you may also have declared interest that you have in companies, either that you co-own or that you serve on a board or at one time you created. Whatever your conflict is that you've declared to the provost, that's part of following the provost policy. This is under the research policies. So this is particular for this proposal and has to be done every single proposal that you do. You declare the conflict on that particular proposal. So is there a conflict with anyone on the team, the OU team, and other organizations that are involved? So for example, if your OU team has co-PI Dr. Smith, and Dr. Smith is the father of your co-PI at the University of Illinois, then you want to declare that, because someone from the outside looking in could say, well, the only reason they picked the University of Illinois was because the co-PI was related to the PI that was there. So you want to declare any apparent conflicts. You have a nepotism issue. So that could be within the OU team, or it could be outside, people involved in other organizations, just like the example that I just gave. Nepotism issues can be involved between spouses working on the same proposal. So declare them. If it's not, we'll ask you some questions. If it's not an issue, we'll tell you. If we think paperwork needs to be filed, we'll tell you that paperwork needs to be filed. In many instances, ORS has always considered that a PI in their own right, even if they're related internally at OU, doesn't have to file nepotism paperwork. So for example, your spouse or your partner is your co-PI, but they're also a PI in their own right, and they've got awards from like NIH or NSF, then we would consider that they were a PI in their own right, so there wasn't a nepotism issue, because you've already filed paperwork with the provost determining that advertises and that you have paperwork on file with that. If this proposal is going into the National Institutes of Health or to a public health service agency, then you have to flag that, because they have special conflict of interest requirements. And if you're not sure if your agency is a PHS or not, you can click here for a list. Some examples would be like the CDC and the American Heart Association. So you're going to say yes. And then this box down here says you're just agreeing to work with us and any other offices as needed to make sure that your conflict of interest issue is taken care of. There is not like a big major issue to check yes for any of these. All that is going to happen is someone's going to come back and ask you some questions. If it's determined that paperwork should be filed, then we'll ask you to file paperwork. It'll go through the compliance office. You'll write a little short couple of paragraphs how you're going to manage the conflict. So for example, if you had the conflict because you had an interest in a company that was also involved in the proposal, a common solution would be that your chair or someone else on the team who didn't have a conflict would be the person who would make any decisions related to that company, like reviewing their expenditure reports and things like that. So it's no big thing. The big thing is if you don't declare it and you have it. Export regulations section, you're going to go through here and answer all these questions related to would export controls be an issue possibly with the proposal that you're working on. So are you planning foreign travel? And if you're going to do foreign travel, are you going to take anything to another country? And this includes if you're going to a conference and you're taking a laptop, the laptop is equipment. So I don't have any foreign travel plans, so I'm going to say no. Are you going to be fabricating anything, including biologicals? Well, if you are, the fabrication might be involved in something related to defense articles or something else that's controlled. So you'd say, yes, I'm not fabricating anything. Are you going to design, develop, modify, or work with things that are related to defense articles or controlled data? You can go to a link. It's not blue, but it's right there under here that shows you what's on the munitions list. It's very common that radar is on there. So that's one that we see sometimes that gets a yes check. Are you going to be doing any work with foreign military forces or units? Are you going to be doing stuff related to encryption or decryption products? You can go to the website there for more information. Are you going to be doing any assistance or training related to satellites or spacecraft launch vehicles? Is the information that you're going to possibly be working with, especially from other companies or from federal agencies, information that is going to be not releasable to the public? So you're going to have to protect it or have some type of proprietary arrangements to secure that data? And you would say yes. Are you intending to publish, teach, or share the information resulting from your research with the public? If you have a data restriction, then that is something that we need to know because that might affect the agreements that come in on the award. This question is related to, are you going to be using telecommunications equipment that is not allowed by this National Defense Authorization Act? So these are related to chips that were produced in China that were found to be harvesting data. If you say yes here, then we'll be following up with you to get more information about what it is that you think is going to be falling outside of the Defense Authorization Act, and so that we can have you work with the Export Control Office on that. And then this just says that you agree that you're going to work with our office in export controls to resolve any issues that come up related to your proposed work and export control. Compliance information. This section is related to human subjects, invertebrate animals, and other things that have special compliance items related to them. If you have it involved, you just check yes or no. So I'm going to say yes to human subjects and no to the rest of these. If you check yes, which you have to answer yes or no, because these all have asterisks that require it, then you can come over here and you can mark other information. So I said yes, I'm going to say it's not applied for yet. I could also say that it was pending. If it was approved, chances are it would still be marked in ORS in Cayuse as being pending because we're going to reconfirm that you have current paperwork on file if an award comes in before you get access to the account funds. Most submissions to federal agencies do not require you to do anything but mark that you are pending for either human subjects or vertebrate animals. If you have recombinant DNA, biohazards, or radioisotopes, we do require that you have a clearance email or letter from the IBC committee at proposal routing stage before you can do proposal submission. So when you flag those, we'll send you a reminder that you need to contact them for that clearance. If your proposal is going to have subcontracts, then you want to indicate that here. If none are involved, then you're going to select no. If you select yes, it's going to open up things that are going to tell you to load who your subcontracts are. And you can add several to these by going to the additional information section in the bottom and just typing in additional information. This also gives you a heads up that this is the information that we need, and you'll also get an email related to that so that you can send it on to whoever your point of contact is at the subcontract institution. If you hit that by accident, you can reset and you can go back and indicate that none are involved. If you're not sure, you can just hit that none are involved, and then you can go down to the bottom and put that you're considering about adding a subcontract in remarks, or you can select that it is involved and that it hasn't been determined yet. So whichever way works, but you do have to answer something because it's a required entry. The next area is our budget information. And you'll note that none of the budget information is asterisk. So none of it is required. So we realize at this stage of the game, you may not have a clear ideal of what is going to be required in the budget or how much you're going to ask for. If you're looking at the guidelines and you see the maximum request, you can fill that out. If you see that the sponsor requires cost share, then you can go ahead and flag that yes in the percentage. If you have an ideal of where you're going to get your cost sharing from, go ahead and list that. This just helps guide either questions that we might ask you in relationship to building your budget, or we know to ask you from scratch. We are going to confirm anything that you enter here with the guidelines. If you are going to ask for a limited IDC, like off campus, you can indicate that here. Or if the sponsor has established a restriction, you can indicate where that is coming from. If it's a website or if it's the specific solicitation, that just helps put us on the same page with you on what the restrictions are as far as the indirect costs are. But like I said, all this information we're going to confirm in the guidelines and we're going to talk to you about. So don't hold up on doing your information sheet because you don't have everything, lined out, all the T's dotted, all the I's dotted and T's crossed on your whole budget package. We don't need that at this point. Additional information. So these are some questions that you have to answer. You know that you can't involve anything in the proposed research that involves human trafficking, forced labor, or child labor, or sexual exploitation. If you check yes, we're going to come back to you and ask you questions about why you're going to include such things in your proposal, because it's against the law, unless you're doing certain types of legal law type work. So most of the time, your answer is going to be no. The VPRP is collecting information related to a consultant that was hired to help with the proposal development and funding announcements called Lewis Burke. So if you learned about a funding opportunity from a Lewis Burke news distribution by the Center for Faculty Excellence or from the OVPRP, then you would check that you did learn it that way. If you actually talked to Lewis Burke about a funding opportunity or received any advice or support from them, then you want to check yes there too. If your research falls under one of these tracks for different research areas that have been identified by the VPRP, then you would flag the track it falls under. If it falls under more than one, pick more than one. If your work doesn't fall under one, then you pick not applicable. If there's anything else that you want to share with the Office of Research Services that will help explain your proposal or make it clear what's happening with this information sheet, or any questions that you have that you want us to respond to, you put them down here in this box. If there is someone else that you would like to have a copy of this form, then you just put their email address down and the form will automatically go to them too. And this notice just lets you know that we're working off campus right now. So that may impact how quickly we respond to you. Your information sheet is going to generate to several offices, including the Office of Research Services. It goes into a central email box. And at that point, when we receive it, it's assigned to a proposal development specialist. Our standing policy is to try and respond within 24 working hours of receiving that email in some manner so that you know who's working on your proposal with you. So that means if you submit the info sheet at 2 or 3 o'clock Friday afternoon, we're not going to get it until sometime later in the day on Friday. We normally don't work in the evenings and on weekends, so you may not get a response until sometime Monday or Tuesday on that info sheet that you've submitted. So when you hit this button down here, and it's hard to see, I know, but it says something about submitting. Just hit it once, because if you hit it more than once, you'll get numerous info sheet submissions. If you hit reset, it's going to clear all your answers. And you can see up here, it's processing it because my buttons are. So this is my acknowledgement that the info sheet did go through. If I had left that other screen as soon as I hit submit and not got this thank you, I wouldn't know if it had gone in or not, because it could have come back to me with a message saying that I had forgot to answer something. And without that answer, it wouldn't go through. And so you would think that your sheet had been submitted, but in reality, it hadn't been.